Welcome in. This is FST Fantasy Sports Today. My name is Matt Striker. His name is Joe Pisapia, and this is the place for those that wish to dominate the upcoming Major League Baseball season, whether it be season-long fantasy, DFS, straight-up wagering, whatever you need, we've got you covered. Quick reminder, we're going to be giving a lot of information. Joe is literally an author. He wrote the book. I'll get into that. But at SportsGrid and at SportsGrid TV, those are our social media handles if you're new to the show or you just lapsed. And a reminder that our app is out there as well, and it's a fantastic addition to all of this information. Remember, you want to win. All right, it's smarter to do it this way. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Joe, talk about writing the book. You are the author of the Fantasy Black Book series. When we talk about the Black Book, we look at the way we compare players to one another within their position, and injuries really matter. And that's how we start this hour off, talking about some injury news. What's up?
Yeah, there's always going to be injuries in Major League Baseball. And the thing when you're drafting your fantasy teams is remember that. And also try not to load your team up with too many injuries already before the season even starts, too. I mean, I understand getting discounts, but I can't tell you how many times you've seen people, they're like, oh, I'll take this guy to discount and this guy to discount. And guess what? They're a discount because they're hurt. And you have more injuries. And next thing you know, you can't have a roster out there that's healthy to compete. So please, this is a public service announcement from Joe Pisapia. Stop drafting all these hurt guys all the time. Okay, let's move on to some guys maybe making a return. Cedric Mullins dealing with that hamstring issue. He is set to resume playing. That's a good thing. You mentioned before in hour one. Cedric Mullins' potential bounce back is huge. Is he that guy we saw a couple years ago that flashed big power and huge speed, or is he a guy that's really just going to chase that forever and that year is going to kind of be the anomaly? We'll find out. Lucas Giolito, the elbow, deciding on surgery or rehab. Spoiler alert, it's going to be surgery. Sorry, I hate to be Debbie Downer, but when has ever the rehab really worked for anybody? I don't know. Masahiro Tanaka maybe that one time? Look, I just don't see this going well for Giolito, so he's off the board completely. Same thing with Bradish. I think both those guys are probably should be off your board because I don't see them making significant contributions in 2023 redraft leagues. Dynasty keeper, different scenario, different set of circumstances. Kodai Senga is making progress with the shoulder, okay, but that's all we're getting, progress. So, as I said earlier, he's still being drafted around the top 100 players overall, and I don't understand why. We know he's going to miss all of April, so that's 4 to 5 starts there. We don't know how much of May he's going to miss or if he'll even be back by June. Yet he's still being drafted ahead of Michael King, ahead of Bailey Ober, ahead of Hunter Brown, ahead of Justin Verlander, who is ahead of Kodai Senga right now in terms of coming back from an injury. So I don't understand this at all. I don't get it, Matt. I understand Senga was really good last year, but it's a long season. But at the same point in time, we're talking about a pitcher here. We're not talking about missing a couple at bats here in April. We're talking about missing significant starts where you only have the ability to impact fantasy once a week or maybe twice on a good week anyway, every 5 starts. So very strange set of circumstances. I don't understand the ADP. And then Alek Manoah, we touched on earlier. There's another one too, dealing with a shoulder injury, unlikely for opening day. Also unlikely for opening day, Emmett Sheehan, who's been dealing with some soreness overall too. That's a blow to that Dodger rotation, that billion-dollar Dodger team.
Yeah. Oh no.
Well,
sell the Dodgers. Thing, break them up.
Let's talk about this because Emmett Sheehan starting the year on the IL. Walker Buehler coming back from an injury. Clayton Kershaw not coming back anytime soon. They spent $1 billion on a couple players. So you got Glass now. You've got Yamamoto, right? You've got a pretty good start to this rotation. But the rest of this rotation is a little scary, don't you think? I mean, if you're the Dodgers, are you starting to look and say, do you really think James Paxton's going to be the glue that holds this LA Dodger rotation together? I don't.
Well, you're asking all the right questions, and I love that we set up the injury news on the other side of the break. I'm going to give you pitching value plays because it goes to show that if you can get those durable, solid, guarantee you 200 innings, 200 strikeouts kind of guys, go and grab them. And as far as pitching goes, you and I both know you can find pitching, folks. So if you're looking at the Sengas and the Manoahs, take someone else. Take the next best pitcher that's around them. With regards to that Dodgers, I don't think they care if 3, 4, and 5 falter because they believe that their offense will always keep them in games. I think Dave Roberts is going to manage 6-inning baseball and expect them to still make some more moves and still try to find just arms by mass, just the volume of arms that they can use to continue to create 6-inning baseball until it matters in September and October is what this baseball team is built to do. Look at it. You mentioned it. Yamamoto physically, he's not built to go from April to September, no, but he is going to be hard to deal with come those hot nights in August when this team is chasing on a home field, and maybe they're already all the way that far ahead. That's how this team is built, and that's how we're going to wager on them, Joe.
I think Bobby Miller is probably the best return on investment in that rotation. 79th player off the board, the 24th pitcher. You're drafting him basically as a high-end number 3, low-end number 2 starter. That makes sense to me. Like, Bobby Miller is the kind of guy that we haven't had any injury issues with yet. We don't have the injury past of Tyler Glasnow. We don't have the question marks about Yamamoto. We don't have the age and restrictions of Clayton Kershaw. James Paxton, forget it. Emmett Sheehan certainly is a guy that, very intriguing from a strikeout potential.
Stone is there as well, right?
Gavin Stone's there as well, but I don't know how much of a Gavin Stone guy I am personally. But look, the Dodgers are gonna have to beat their opponents' brains in offensively, I think, in April and May, and they might just do that. But it's something to understand too going in that the Dodgers are not immune just because they spent $1 billion from losing. Like, they're just not immune to it. The Mets rotation too, we did make the joke, or at least I made the joke, that it looks like an expansion rotation. What is the plan here for the New York Mets rotation? Because, outside of Senga, I don't know what it is they're trying to do, because it's not compete in 2020.
They're treading water. They're treading water with the hopes of 2025 and catering to a fan base that, if the team gives them something, will become very vibrant. I think that Severino, if you expect nothing from him, you'll be pleasantly surprised. Minaya has been really good this spring. Quintana, what's wrong with Jose Quintana? If Jose Quintana comes out and is serviceable just against the backdrop of what Citi Field has seen, he's going to look great. McGill was a darling for a while. You couldn't stop singing about him. He's having a great spring now. They need guys like that. Maybe David Peterson, I think, is still hurt. But they need some of these, hey, who's that guy that Queens can get behind, a homegrown kind of guy that we don't see coming. But I'm with you. But as a Met fan, you should have some hope, right? It's spring. Hope springs eternal.
I should. I don't. Maybe 2025. Look, they did a very good job of two things that they did a good job of. The first thing is getting all the prospects they got last year. And the second thing is getting rid of the age in that rotation. And unfortunately, it feels like this is the year you're paying for all of those signings, for Scherzer, for Verlander, all of that, because guess what? Verlander and Scherzer are not going to be pitching on opening day for either of their respective teams. So that looks like a very good move in hindsight for the Mets, plus they acquired all the young talent. So it's a good move from that perspective. It's a good move from the perspective of trying to get younger. But there were options this year of other guys they could have pursued and gone after that they did not, which to me just doesn't make much sense. And I think you could have done a little bit more as a New York franchise. But rant aside, there are some values at pitcher, and if you're trying to find them, we're going to help you. We come back, we're going to look at some pitchers going right around an ADP of 100 that might have ace potential. That's right. Who are they? We'll tell you right here on SportsGrid.
Boston's going to the NBA Finals, and at this point, I'm still willing to say this early that they're the best team in the NBA, even better, in my view, than the Nuggets.
Barkley, for me, I say the front runners would be the Dallas Cowboys and or the Philadelphia Eagles, and I think Jerry might get in on this and say just make it happen and get Saquon on our football team.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Women's basketball, as a coach, as a basketball purist, is so much better to watch than the men. You don't believe me? Sit down, watch it for yourself. Think about the fact that the athleticism is different. So now you have to depend on your fundamental and your skill and not your athleticism.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
The books are treating the Celtics 4 points better at minimum than maybe every single team in the NBA. And so far, I believe they've covered every game since the break.
The Celtics' strict goal here, anything less than a finals appearance and a finals championship is going to be a failure for the Celtics. They got all the pressure in the world across the board here.
Game time decisions only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
Newswire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell Coast to Coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game time decisions.
Luka is actually far more dangerous from 3 on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight, you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
In-game live. Prime time.
We got not 1, but 2 coaches fired systems in place.
Sports Rage
This
Late
sort of
Night.
has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Great.
All right, folks, welcome back into FST Fantasy Sports Today. Matt and Joe with you here, getting you ready for maybe have an upcoming fantasy baseball draft, or maybe you're just getting ready to look at some wagers, look at some futures, however you want it. We've got you covered for the whole entire season. It's really all about value. I mean, Joe, before we came on the air, was talking about where he gets his cutlets from. He's got a good place right by him. I said, you know what? I'm going to go to that place right by you to get the value cut. But I'm not going to stop by and say hello. You want to know why? Because that upsets Joe. That grinds his gears. And that's what kind of friend I am. But listen, I have to be in this mood because I have a draft coming up too. I can't be nice. I have to go for the kill. Pitching value plays. Should I reach? Should I not? Joe, you put this together. It's nice. It's pitchers all going around an ADP of 100 that, Joe, you believe, you use this word, could turn out to be aces. What's up?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we're going to start with a guy who was a fantasy ace not that long ago. And it's amazing to me, the short-term memory that people have of good players. And yet the short-term memory they seem to have of negative things too, where, people keep drafting Byron Buxton every year thinking there's going to be a different outcome. I don't understand how people's memory works sometimes.
But he said he feels great. He said he wants to steal 30 bases and he's in the best shape of his life.
Byron Buxton's like almost the equivalent of Josh Gordon was, I think, in the NFL, where everyone just kept chasing and they hoped 1 year it was going to work. But it never really does. But the first guy I'm going to talk about is a guy that was in Cy Young contention not that long ago. A guy for the San Diego Padres in Joe Musgrove, who right now is being drafted as the 98th player off the board in consensus ADP on Fantasy Pros. And last year, he started the season a little late because he dropped a weight on his toe. Again, there was no arm issue. Everyone said, right. Oh, no, he's going to miss some starts. He missed like 2 starts in April. Who cares? We drafted him everywhere, and he was tremendous last year until, unfortunately, a little bit of a shoulder issue caught up with him. So if you look at what he did last year, he was still vintage Joe Musgrove. 10-3 over 97 innings, a 3 ERA, 3.05 to be specific, a 1.41 whip, 97 strikeouts in 97 innings, so still a strikeout per 9, 21 walks over that span. So still the strikeout to walk ratio was absurdly good. This is a player that in 2021 and 2022 had over 181 innings in both years. So he's a workhorse guy, a guy that's really not showing you any decline whatsoever. And I understand the concern with the shoulder injury, and that's why you're getting the discount you are. But to me, it was all about what does he look like in spring? We always say spring doesn't mean much, except for the guys where it means everything. And Joe Musgrove is a guy where spring means everything. He's got to prove that he's healthy. And so far, he has proven that. He's hit every single milestone, every single hurdle. So what are we worried about right now? Joe Musgrove is a player that if you are like me and you are attacking offense early and often, I'm okay with Joe Musgrove being the first pitcher in my rotation because I know at his best, he is exactly that. He is a true number one. So these are players that you can get away with as your number 2 or maybe even number 3 starters, depending upon, the depth of your league.
Right.
But I'm telling you right now, if you're waiting on pitching, and I think that's a smart thing to do in this current climate of the guys that are at the top of the pitching market, but also the offense that's available in the early rounds, if you miss out on that elite offense, you're going to be struggling. Pitching's easier to find, and Joe Musgrove right now is one of these guys that I think is being grossly undervalued in the market. So Musgrove at 98, to me, is a must-have in 2024.
And let's not lose sight of what we're talking about here. We're not saying go out and take Joe Musgrove as your first pitcher off the board. What we're trying to say, I believe, Joe, is that we can build something with these arms much later, which will allow us to go and get some of the elite offense that is there. Of course, there are a few pitchers that are outliers that, yes, by all means, go and grab. But if we can start to build, this next pitcher is a perfect example of that. A guy like Cole Reagans from Kansas City. Now, for me, from a wagering perspective, every time he goes, it's first 3s and first 5s. I want to get in and get out until I know exactly what Kansas City is going to be. There's a lot of potential there, a lot of potential. Bullpen situation, I think, still needs to be mired out. It should be Will Smith's job, but as of now, it'll be listed as committee. But Reagans in isolation has a lot of different ways that you can definitely make some money on him, Joe.
He does. And I think in season-long fantasy, he's a very interesting piece. As you said, okay, how deep into games is he going to go? A lot of it has to do with efficiency as well. And this could end up being one of the great follies of the Rangers organization. It's very rare you see a pitcher get traded in season and blow up the way Cole Reagans did. And then that team go on to, obviously, the Texas Rangers still win a World Series despite that. So are they going to look back in a couple of years and go, well, we won the World Series, but we gave up a potential ace to do it? I don't know. We're going to find out here what 2024 brings for Cole Reagans. But the one thing 2023 certainly brought was a huge turnaround. When he became a starting pitcher and went back to doing that for Kansas City, he was electric. You look at the 96 innings that he pitched in total between the bullpen in Texas and between the rotation in Kansas City, a 3.56 ERA, 113 strikeouts in 96 innings. He was electric, a 1.17 whip. Now, projections have him landing a little bit closer to almost a 4 ERA, which I understand, but it's that 35% whiff rate that is really stunning. We're talking about a guy, a lefty with electric fastball, electric stuff, who, certainly everybody's very excited about. Now, certain people in the community are going to be even more excited in the fantasy baseball community, and they're going to push his ADP continuously.
Sure.
But right now, it's still at a place where I think it's very comfortable to jump in. And I think there's a scenario you could paint here where the Kansas City Royals are a little bit more interesting than people realize. If some of these offseason investments work out, and if some of these players that they have, like Pasquantino returning, if Michael Garcia takes a step forward, like all of a sudden the Royals are a really intriguing team. But Reagans at the top of this rotation is somebody I think you have to pay a lot of attention to. He was just dominant last year at some point. Can he maintain that? We'll see. It's kind of a weird thing, though, when you look at a pitcher that had some struggles in the minor leagues, always had a lot of upside, then all of a sudden gets traded and all of a sudden the light switches. Maybe it's a little bit of some of the work he did in the offseason last year and then didn't get the right opportunities with the Rangers and then said, hey, I'm going to show you. And when he got that starting gig again, showed everybody how good he could be. Or maybe it was the Royals staff there, the pitching coach and the team there getting the most out of him as a young pitcher. Let's see it carry over in 2024. There's more risk here with Reagans than Musgrove. I would take Musgrove every single time over Reagans because I think it's just safer, and that's the kind of investment I want to make for season-long fantasy. But you're right, Matt. This is a player to watch in 2024.
Yeah, and remember, we're going to always talk about the different ways to attack a player. Everyone's going to say, oh, season-long, I don't want him, I don't want him. There are other ways. Things go on outside of your season-long fantasy league, whether you realize it or not. So having a full understanding, a full spectrum of understanding on these players, how to wager on their teams, when they pitch, things like that, will help us with everything season-long in DFS. A team that certainly fits this example is a team like Cleveland, right? The Guardians are still going to return some good pitching and a great bullpen. It's just a question that somebody other than Ramirez needs to hit the ball, and we'll have a conversation about a name that could be on the tips of tongues later on. But Tanner Bybee is going to be a fun part of a rotation that I believe, again, early starts in games, first 3s and first 5s, and unders. Try to get out before the volatility of can they hit in the 7th, 8th, and 9th inning, and then you have to worry about the bullpen. Joe.
Yeah, Tanner Bybee last year, 142 innings, had a 3-to-1 strikeout to walk ratio, a 2.98 ERA. Now his FIP was at 3.52, and the xFIP was at 4.22. So you might get a Tanner Bybee closer to maybe a 3.9 ERA this year. But even if that happens, you're still looking at a guy, again, 3-to-1 strikeout walk ratios. That's the stuff of aces. That's the stuff of guys who dominate the big league level. And Bybee is part of a Cleveland pitching factory that's been producing guys for many, many years. He is in this, what people are calling the dead zone of starting pitching, but I disagree. When you're giving me names like Musgrove, you're giving me names like Bybee and Reagans. I don't think it's a dead zone at all. Joe Ryan and Justin Steele are kind of in this range as well, and Bobby Miller at the very top of it. So I continue to look at the board of 2024, and the board of 2024 screams to me, invest in offense early and then hit this group of pitchers, because the risk reward is so perfect in terms of ratio, where you're getting a lot of guys who are still right in the prime years, or still growing into those prime years, who have a lot of upside still and a lesser cost when you can lock in your offense. And I think that's just a better approach for 2024. And Tanner Bybee is one of those guys I feel good about. He's being drafted as basically an SP3, and he's got SP1 upside. When we come back, we're going to take a look at some value hitters in your drafts. We return on SportsGrid.
I think Boston's going to the NBA Finals, and at this point, I'm still willing to say this early that they're the best team in the NBA, even better, in my view, than the Nuggets.
Luckily for me, I say the front runners would be the Dallas Cowboys and or the Philadelphia Eagles, and I think Jerry might get in on this and say, just make it happen and get Saquon on our football team.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Women's basketball, as a coach, as a basketball purist, is so much better to watch than the men. You don't believe me? Sit down, watch it for yourself. Think about the fact that the athleticism is different. So now you have to depend on your fundamental and your skill and not your athleticism.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
The books are treating the Celtics 4 points better at minimum than maybe every single team in the NBA. And so far, I believe they've covered every game since the break.
The Celtics' strict goal here, anything less than a finals appearance and a finals championship is going to be a failure for the Celtics. They got all the pressure in the world across the board here.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
Newswire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell Coast to Coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game time decisions.
Luka is actually far more dangerous from 3 on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight, you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
In-game live, prime time.
We got not one, but 2 coaches fired systems in place.
Sports Rage
This
late
sort
night.
of has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Break.
All right, welcome back into FST, Fantasy Sports Today. I'm Matt, he's Joe. We have a great time here in the show, whether the cameras are on or not. And just so you know, during the break, we're making up songs about friends' moms and getting the names wrong. And then we find out what their mom's name is really. And we go, no, there's no way that's true. And then we tell that person, no, that's not your mom's name. In any event, it's all about having a good time because a lot of us have drafts coming up. And I think going into a draft with a positive mindset, not being stressed, not closing the door. I got a draft. Keep the kids quiet. That doesn't go on in my house, I promise. You have to go with a positive mindset. So having the value plays in your pocket really gives you a sense of. So that's what we're here to do. We're here to goose fraba the whole situation. Joe, you have a list of value plays here that I think are really interesting. They're all guys going around, I'd say 120 would be the highest, maybe 123. These are guys that you think are really going to be valuable. Let's talk. Where do you want to start?
I do want to talk about these guys. And it wasn't just any song we were making up. We were making up a classic Bruce Springsteen Shore song because we found out that our producer's mom was a huge Bruce Springsteen fan. So we made up a Bruce Springsteen song. And I may or may not have been singing that song in the break. But that's the bonus content on FST that you get later on. But this is bonus content we're giving you. See, bringing it back on track. ADP of 93. I touched on this player earlier in hour one, talking about Nico Horner going around the top 50 picks. I don't understand that. CJ Abrams, great season, going somewhere on that same spot. I don't quite understand that either. How about Xander Bogaerts, folks? Last year, Xander Bogaerts signed a big contract with the Padres, and he struggled in the first half of the season. He did not struggle in the second half. He was electric in the second half. So despite the slow start, he still ended up playing 155 games, having 170 hits, 19 homers, 19 steals, and hit 285.
Yep.
Now, here's the thing. When it comes to Abrams and Horner, who are going, 4 rounds ahead of him, 4. Xander Bogaerts is going to give you more power than those guys. He's going to probably give you more consistent batting average than those guys. I'm just saying the track record of Xander Bogaerts is a bit longer than those guys. He is going to still be in a good lineup, despite the fact that Juan Soto's gone. It's not like Fernando Tatis and Manny Machado and Ha-Seong Kim are still not in San Diego last time I checked. Like, San Diego's still going to be a very competitive team despite losing Juan Soto. So let's not overreact to that loss too much here. But Xander Bogaerts, again, the second half of 2023 was stunningly good. It was exactly in line with the player he's always been. Whether it's Bryce Harper, Carlos Beltran, the list goes on and on and on over the many, many decades of guys signing big contracts. They tend to struggle out of the gate. They press a little bit. It's a new place, new situation, new surroundings. It takes a while for guys to settle in. Sometimes they never do, but Xander Bogaerts did. So let's not complain. Let's not worry. Why you're getting a discount to this degree is crazy. Xander Bogaerts should be the guy who's going in the 50 to 60 range, not in the ADP closer to 100. And at 93, that's exactly where he's going, Matt.
Well, here's the thing. What's the difference? And I'll show you that I don't use the product. What's the difference between the newest iPhone and the iPhone that was 3 generations before it? Is there really a difference? Can I still call you? Can I still text you? Can I still check my email? Of course you can. The other day, my son said, I want ice cream. And I hit him with we have ice cream at home. And we did. And I had to stop myself and go, oh my gosh. Xander Bogaerts is the ice cream at home. 20 home runs, 20 stolen bases, and hitting 285. The reason Horner and all these other guys are going higher is because of the inflated, in this case, stolen bases for a guy like Horner or for Abrams. The pop and the speed is intriguing a lot of people. But you've had the Xander Bogaerts. You know the Xander Bogaerts. That's a shirt that's been in your closet a long time. You don't want to wear it. It's still the most comfortable, most practical item of clothing. And I promise if you put a nice little blazer over it, you can get away with a lot. So Joe is right. Don't overlook these guys just because they aren't the latest and greatest version. 280, hit 20, steal 20, 285 even. Come on, don't overlook that. Next guy, Joe, I've always been on this player, and I know people will be off because he had, many would say would be a volatile season, but I'm going to let you talk a lot of people back in. Not too many, because I still want to be in on this player about this particular Philadelphia Philly.
Oh, look, Nick Castellanos had a down year in 2022, so the draft stock was low. That's fine, because in 2021, he had a brilliant season, the best season of his career, where he had 34 homers and 100 RBI. So after 2022 being a down year, he bounced back in 2023, 29 homers and 106 RBI and hit 272. Yet he's still being drafted as almost the 100th player off the board at 98. I'm going to ask you this question, Matt. When you look at the numbers here, and again, the numbers are good all around, he's going to steal more bases than Mike Trout. He is probably going to play more games than Mike Trout. He is probably going to have more home runs than Mike Trout because of the games played. Just that's what history's been telling us. Mike Trout's being drafted at 53. Nick Castellanos is being drafted at 98. So I don't understand this value. So if you're playing in, let's say, salary cap formats, right? The old school auction leagues that are now salary cap.
Right.
Why not pay for Nick Castellanos, or should I say pay less for him than you are some of the other outfielders that are going to be the bigger name guys? I mean, Cody Bellinger, look, Cody Bellinger had a great season last year, but Cody Bellinger's great season was 26 homers. Again, less than Nick Castellanos. He hit 307, but it's not that long ago where Cody Bellinger was hitting 210. So I don't understand right now the way this order works. I understand Nolan Jones and being aggressive on him. That's a player in this outfield mix around this ADP I get. I understand Jazz Chisholm because, again, young player, if he puts everything together, what it could look like from a power and speed combination, that's fair. But then when you start to get down to George Springer, Evan Carter, who's very unproven still, that's the guys and that's the group here where it comes to Nick Castellanos ADP. And I'm looking at Nick Castellanos and I'm saying to myself, why does nobody want this guy right now? He gives you a little bit of speed. He gives you a lot of power. He's in a great lineup, in a terrific ballpark, and he's in his prime in terms of age. Matt, tell me why, because I can't think of a reason.
Because sadly, if you take 100 fantasy baseball players, how many know Mike Trout versus how many know Nick Castellanos? It's the name value. It's the, so you're telling me there's a chance. the girl, I have no interest at all. I'm sorry, I'm married. So you're telling me, people like to, in their mind, think this is the year that Mike Trout is going to be everything and more, and I'm the one that knew it. We are our own worst enemies. I don't want to get this into a philosophy thing, but as humans with minds that take in information, we become our own worst enemies because the thing to do with intelligence is not to keep it, but to use it. And these are the words of the scribes. So when you think and you hold up Mike Trout to Nick Castellanos, you're doing yourself a disservice. Don't do that. It's two entirely different things. Joe is right. And in the break, I'm actually going to go and check in on one of the Castellanos managers in a league of mine and try to make a trade because he's right. Another player, though, this is where now I'm going to let Joe set it up. Go to a team like Washington, where if you think people don't know Nick Castellanos, how many people in your league truly know this next player on this team? Because they don't, and he could be a free square, Joe.
Whether they know him or not, it's whether or not they believe in him. That's the question here. And I think, I don't know why Nick Castellanos can't shake the dust off a bad 2022 after a monstrous 2023, but Lane Thomas somehow can't shake the dust off a really successful 2023 into a good ADP in 2024. Why? Probably because he plays for the Nationals. 101 runs, 28 homers, 86 RBI, 20 steals, and a 268 batting average. If you take the name Lane Thomas away from these stats, Matt, this is a player being drafted, I would say probably in the first 3 rounds of most roto leagues with those kind of numbers. Again, just the numbers. 100 runs, 86 RBI, 20 steals, 28 homers. I mean, what am I missing here? Now, let's point to some of the downsides and maybe we could say, all right, look, Lane Thomas was very good last year, but he only had a 310 OBP. Okay, that's fair. The BABIP was very high, was 325. So maybe the 268 batting average isn't repeatable. So let's pull his projections down a little bit. Let's call him 80 to 85 runs scored, right? Because he's hitting towards the top of the order regardless. Let's say, he hits 22 homers and steals 15 bases, only drives in 75 runs, only hits 250. At an ADP of 120, Lane Thomas is still an incredible value in every single format you can get him in. So once again, take advantage of the fact that he's not on a great team in a market that is not getting a lot of publicity right now for their baseball squad. And Lane Thomas is a player in fantasy that even with monstrous regression still becomes a good return on investment. So Lane Thomas is another guy, again, ADP of 120, you need to be taking advantage of.
Yeah, and I like that little game that you did there by giving yourself the regression. And I think on the batting average, you definitely overcorrected, but that's what we do. It goes back to the conversation of we outthink ourselves. So, Joe, you were smart there to give some reasonable and then just over it just a bit and still say that he fits into the formula or the space where you believe he belongs. All right, moving on to Cleveland. You have a point? Go ahead.
I just want to throw this out there. Randy Arozarena. Last year, 95 runs scored, 23 homers, 84 RBI, 22 steals, 255 batting average. He's being drafted as the 43rd player going off the board.
Of course.
How different is that than all those numbers I just threw at you at Lane Thomas?
Yeah.
not different at all.
It's a wonderful practice for those that have drafts coming up. Cover up the names of players and just look at some stats and do that, and then see how much later you can pluck these stats. Don't draft the name on the back of the sweater, the jersey. Sorry, I'm a hockey guy.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to Cleveland now. Josh Naylor will slate at first base and DH. Be careful. We're not talking about Bo. We're talking about Josh here. Someone else has to hit the baseball in Cleveland. Is Josh Naylor that guy?
He is. I mean, Josh Naylor was that guy hitting it last year. I mean, take a look what he did, 121 games. Now, that's the problem, is he needs to play 155 to really bump up his value. But 17 homers, 97 RBI in 121 games. 308 batting average. He also stole 10 bags. He's being drafted at 123 overall. Josh Naylor is one of my favorite value plays at first base, at a utility spot, at a corner infield spot. Josh Naylor, all he's got to do is get those games played, bumped up. And if he does, all that fantastic productivity he showed you in 2023 and even in 2022, he could be a breakout player this year. And I think nobody's talking about him but us. And I think you should take advantage of his value in every single draft you are in. We come back, a look at some guys who are off to good starts in spring and what that might mean for their fantasy value. And we return right after this.
I think Boston's going to the NBA Finals, and at this point, I'm still willing to say this early that they're the best team in the NBA, even better, in my view, than the Nuggets.
Largely for me, I say the front runners would be the Dallas Cowboys and or the Philadelphia Eagles, and I think Jerry might get in on this and say just make it happen and get Saquon on our football team.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Women's basketball, as a coach, as a basketball purist, is so much better to watch than the men. You don't believe me? Sit down, watch it for yourself. Think about the fact that the athleticism is different. So now you have to depend on your fundamental and your skill and not your athleticism.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
The books are treating the Celtics 4 points better at minimum than maybe every single team in the NBA. And so far, I believe they've covered every game since the break.
The Celtics' strict goal here, anything less than a finals appearance and a finals championship is going to be a failure for the Celtics. They got all the pressure in the world across the board here.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
Newswire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell Coast to Coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game time decisions.
Luka is actually far more dangerous from 3 on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight, you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
In-game live, prime time.
We got not one, but 2 coaches fired systems in place.
Sports Rage
This
Late
sort of
Night.
has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Break.
right. Welcome back into FST Fantasy Sports Today. Matt and Joe with you here, getting you ready for the upcoming baseball season. And Joe, I got to tell you, no matter how many times I see it, I still marvel at the fact of the way it all goes down, right? March is really windy. It blows the seeds all across the land, all across the backyard. April's really rainy. It waters the seeds. And then in May, you know what? Boom, the flowers come. Each and every year, no matter what, that happens. And that, I don't know about you, man, that gives me hope. And this segment is entitled Spring Risers. And I just want to say, just be careful, because a lot of times some of these risers can be weeds and not the good kind, wink, wink, because some of these guys might not break camp. So if you have drafts coming up before camp breaks, think that you are using a roster spot for some of these guys that may or may not break camp. Spring Risers. Let's have the conversation. Joe, lead the way.
Well, the first guy to talk about is James Wood, who was the linchpin in the Juan Soto trade with the Washington Nationals. Yes, C.J. Abrams was part of that trade, but also James Wood. And I think Wood is one of these players you're going to look at and say, all right, this is a player that has enormous power potential. You've seen that on display already in the spring. 3 homers already, 5 RBI, hitting 375. Again, it's early, it's spring training. It doesn't mean much. A 1250 OPS. It's eye-opening, though, and it makes a good impression on the big club. Now, James Wood last year, if you look back at the numbers between high A and double A, a combined 129 games, 26 homers, 91 RBI. He also had 18 stolen bases, so he's got some speed as well, folks. Hit 262 with a 520 slugging. Now, he did struggle a little bit at double A. My guess is he's probably going to start at double A this year, maybe just give him another 50 at-bats and bump him to triple A. But at some point this season, my guess is probably after the All-Star break, you could see James Wood making an impact here for the Washington Nationals. They're already showing you they're trying to move this organization forward, get these guys some experience. C.J. Abrams, they were very patient with last year, and it paid off. I'm not saying they're going to rush James Wood. If Wood should struggle at all in AAA, then he will spend the entire year there. But if he dominates the way he did in high A and most of the time at AA last year, you're going to see Wood make an impact, and it's a name to keep on your radar. It's a name in dynasty leagues that I think is going to probably have an estimated time of arrival. Like I said, I would think August of this year, maybe sooner. You never know if he just completely lights up the board. If he has such a great spring that they say, you know what, let's just start him in AAA, then you're going to see him a little bit sooner. Then it's probably going to be more like July. So he's a guy to keep on your radar. And Matt, this is a really exciting rookie class. I actually made a comment on my Fantasy Pros MLB show earlier this week of saying this might be the most exciting rookie class since 1986, where that was Barry Bonds and Bobby Bonilla and Will Clark and Bo Jackson and you know, we had McGuire and all those, like a crazy amount of guys that you just look back and go, all of those guys were rookies in the same year. And just to give a look too, Evan Carter, Jackson Holliday, Wyatt Langford, Junior Caminero, Colt Heath, and then that's not even mentioning guys like Manzardo or Kierstad or some of those guys that are really intriguing. Then on the National League side, Yamamoto, I know he's older, but Jackson Churio, Jung-Ho Lee, Imanaga, Kyle Harrison, Jordan Lawler, Pete Crow Armstrong potentially. This is a group, DL Hall. You can just keep going on and on and on. This could be one of the great rookie classes that Major League Baseball has seen in a generation. And I don't think that's hyperbole. And I think that's a great thing for the game. And James Wood could be part of that rookie class. And we're barely even talking about him. But I wanted to bring him up because he's been so good so far to start off spring that I think it's worth monitoring what the Nationals do and what their plan is for him, because their plan could include him in 2024 earlier than we think.
Yeah, it's a great point. It is about hope. That's what baseball is about. And when you look at the rookie class, you're going to watch list all of these guys. If in your league you have something to that effect, you watch list these types of players, and then you start to think, what can I do? But one thing I will say is I like to always employ this practice is every 3 weeks to 4 weeks within my season, I'll evaluate my team and I'll see where we're lacking. Oh, look, we're lacking in making it up runs and RBI. I'll look at my watch list and I'll match who can give me that or I think can give me that. And then I'll even go to the waiver wire and see who's excelling in those categories. And it's a good way to kind of just keep all of your numbers balanced. So if you find yourself in August lacking some pop and Wood is on his way up or maybe he's up, that's definitely a way to go. This next player is someone I think that can return dividends a lot quicker, and it's on a team where no one is going to look, and that's fine because it feels to me, and I've said this before, I'm going to go shopping in a place called Jamaica Avenue, or I'm going to go shopping at the big box store mall. I grew up shopping at Jamaica Avenue. I get the same socks, same T-shirt, same everything, and I'll get it for a fraction of the price. Zach Geloff is going to be one of those guys on an Oakland team that could provide some, if not a lot, of production. Joe, thoughts?
Yeah, no one's talking about him because he plays in Oakland and they're not a good offense.
Yeah,
but you saw the stats
fine.
there: 2 homers, 8 runs, 381 batting average so far, a 1268 OPS. I know it's only about a week and change here we're talking about, but still, it's something to notice, especially because he is a player that played 69 games last year at the big league level, had 14 homers and 14 steals very quietly for the A's that nobody was paying attention to. 267 batting average, but a 504 slugging. If you look at the track record, though, this is a guy with a 381 career OBP in the minor leagues. In AAA in the PCL, so you take it with a grain of salt in 2023, 69 games there as well, 401 OBP. So he has on-base skills, he's got speed, he's got pop, he's got an everyday job. Zach Geloff might be one of, I think, the best kept secrets in fantasy baseball right now. And in terms of ADP, this is a player that you can get dirt cheap. I mean, he is right now 143 overall. You want to talk about, maybe you don't feel good about Nico Horner as your second baseman, or maybe you don't feel great about making investments early on. Let's say Ozzie Albies and Marcus Semien get away from you, or you don't want to pay that price. And then maybe that middle tier gets away from you and you're looking to kind of make up ground. Zach Geloff, I think, is a great way to make up that ground at second base or at middle infield too. Again, just because he doesn't play in a great team and a great offense, kind of like Lane Thomas earlier we talked about, don't dismiss the stats. The stats are good. And I think this is another player where having a strong spring matters, because he isn't a guy that's played a lot in the major leagues. So you want to see him continue to show that he is prepared and able to hit major league pitching. And so far, Zach Geloff hasn't given you any reason to believe he can't do that again in 2024.
Friends, I'm going to tell you, each and every season, there's always a position that you find yourself kind of scrambling to always fill in. Second base is going to be that position this season. Just take a look, open up some of your apps, just take a look, even if leagues haven't started yet, just take a look at some of the rankings and start to tier in your mind, T-I-E-R, not T-A-R. Start to tier in your mind the second basemen and think, if I don't get so-and-so, what am I going to do? Zach Geloff is going to be a great little finger in the dam. This next player, I want to hear what Joe has to say, because I hear some people saying, nope, not going to waste the time. Others are saying, yes, there's holes in the swing. I don't know what to make of this team's entire offense. Is there going to be a regression? What's going to happen here? But Joe, set the stage and take it away.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I mean, Evan Carter is an exciting young player, but Wyatt Langford is the guy to me that I'm more excited about of these two.
Yeah.
Really quick hands, strong right-handed swing. He has got good power. I think physically he looks a little bit more ready for 150 games at the major league level. I still look at Evan Carter as a guy that's a little tall and lanky and slight. I look at Wyatt Langford, he's built almost like a running back. He's a guy that's I just think is going to hold up and be a little bit more durable. As far as the holes in the swing, it's nothing I don't get. He's got good gap power. He's got good power to the opposite field. He's able to, make good pitch recognition skills. Like, there's all the things that you're looking for out of him, and he's going cheaper than currently Evan Carter is, which is another thing I don't quite understand why that's going on. He's had a very good start to his campaign already. The Rangers are an interesting team because you have established veterans like Corey Seager, like Marcus Semien that you're going to lean on, but then you have this influx of these young players like Langford, like Carter. And I think as you're looking forward here to this season, the better return on investment right now in ADP is Wyatt Langford, in my opinion. If you look at the minor league career, it's a very short window there, only 44 minor league games, but he hit 360 with a 480 OBP. So he showed you this guy's got it. In the NCAA, he was just unbelievably good.
Yeah.
So I think the concern with Langford is we don't want to rush him, which I understand, but this is a very polished college bat that I think that is going to make an impact in this season. And if you're going to talk about holes and swings and things like that, I think Evan Carter's more that guy too, especially against left-handed pitching that I have still some concerns about. So Wyatt Langford to me is a guy that I'm a little bit more bullish on, and I like the return on investment more. But look at the spring, 4 homers already. This power is for real with this kid. He makes hard contact. He's another guy too. Pay attention to Wyatt Langford.
And I'll apply some balance to strategy for those that are going to look for a lot of these young names and chase a lot of that young pop. Try to balance things out with batting average guys. We've talked about who those guys could be because you're going to see a lot of strikeouts. With this youth, you still pitching will be able to dominate them, I think, for the first half of the season until adjustments are made. Wager accordingly and draft accordingly. All right, let's turn to a pitcher now that Joe, we've talked about him before. Here he comes again, and he's needed. He certainly is, because if he can be what he once was before he fell off, it could really help a ball club. Take it away.
Yeah, Tyler McGill is going to get starts for the Mets. With Kodai Senga out and the rest of this rotation being suspect at best, pay attention to Tyler McGill. He could be one of the most added guys, so rather than add in week 1 and waste fab budget, just draft him at the end of your draft with your last pick. 13 strikeouts, 2 walks, and 8 innings. That's something to pay attention to. He has shown flashes of being a really good pitcher at times, and he's only just 27 years old. So keep that in mind. A lot of these pitchers we see, they really start to come into their own 28, 29 years old, believe it or not, most of the time at the big league level. So far over 8 innings in spring training, again, I don't want to overrate this, but we're talking about opportunity available, and we're talking about experience where he's pitched at the major league level before. Look, there's varying levels of, quality in which we've seen out of McGill, but he's made some really good starts. The problem with McGill is consistency start to start and trying to find that. Now, if he's worked this offseason and is able to, bring that into spring training and then into the big leagues in 2024, then McGill could be, like I said, one of the most added guys you're going to see in April. But before we waste fab and do that, let's just add him to the back end of our fantasy, rosters right now. And if it doesn't work out, you cut him in April. It's a very easy thing. But if he does, it's very useful to have a guy who can eat some innings and maybe give you some better starts. But the eye-opening thing is that strikeout to walk ratio that's early for him. Another guy, too, that I'm very high on is Bailey Ober of the Minnesota Twins. I've talked a lot about this Twins rotation. Bailey Ober had a great season last year for a young pitcher coming in. Only 4 innings so far, but look at this number here, 10 strikeouts in 4 innings, Matt, for Bailey Ober. This rotation is going to be very good. The 10 strikeouts, 2 walks over that span, like he is showing so far, he looks very dominant this spring. He's a big kid. You put Ober with Ryan and Lopez. That is one hell of a trio in that Twins rotation. Matt, this is another pitcher going way later than he should. Do you have shares or are you targeting shares of Bailey Ober in 2024?
Yes, and I do believe the Twins are emerging as the clear-cut winner of that division, and I think pitching is at a premium, and Bailey Ober is a great way to go, as is this next Red Sox pitcher. Joe, take it away.
Yeah, Garrett Whitlock is this guy that we've talked about more than once, and this is another guy kind of like McGill. It's been a tease at times. Another big guy. He's bounced between the bullpen and between the rotation before and teased us. So far, he has been dominating big league hitters, or at least any hitter they've thrown in front of him in spring. So far in 8 innings, 10 strikeouts, 0 walks. That's the key, folks. A better version of Garrett Whitlock is one that has better control. He's going to have a spot in this rotation. The Red Sox need him, especially with Giolito to miss significant time. It's not all the season, potentially. I think Garrett Whitlock's going to get another shot here. And if maybe the third time's the charm, this could be a very useful fantasy pitcher that's going to cost you almost nothing to draft and put on your roster. So those are some guys that are having some good starts to spring training. We'll see if it carries over into 2024 when we come back. Close things out here on FS2.
I think Boston's going to the NBA Finals, and at this point, I'm still willing to say this early that they're the best team in the NBA, even better, in my view, than the Nuggets.
Barkley, for me, I say the front runners would be the Dallas Cowboys and or the Philadelphia Eagles, and I think Jerry might get in on this and say just make it happen and get Saquon on our football team.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Women's basketball, as a coach, as a basketball purist, is so much better to watch than the men. You don't believe me? Sit down, watch it for yourself. Think about the fact that the athleticism is different. So now you have to depend on your fundamental and your skill and not your athleticism.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
books are treating the Celtics 4 points better at minimum than maybe every single team in the NBA. And so far, I believe they've covered every game since the break.
The Celtics' strict goal here, anything less than a finals appearance and a finals championship is going to be a failure for the Celtics. They got all the pressure in the world across the board here.
Game time decisions only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
Newswire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell, coast to coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game time decisions.
Luka is actually far more dangerous from 3 on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight, you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
In-game live, prime time.
We got not one, but 2 coaches fired systems in place.
Sports Rage
This
Late
sort of
Night.
has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Break.
All right, welcome back in FST Fantasy Sports Today. Matt and Joe with you here, ramping it up as we get closer and closer to first pitch, giving you everything you need to dominate. Season-long fantasy, if you have a draft coming up tonight, good luck. If you have it coming up in the weeks to come, we've got you covered. DFS will be with you every step of the way. Straight-up wagering, we'll attack it day in, day out, week in, week out, month in, month out, because it's a living, breathing thing. As is my partner, contrary to popular belief, Joe Pisapia, who now has the stat of the day.
I'm alive. Well, the stat of the day still remains the billions of dollars that the Dodgers have spent this offseason, which, again, you could add up a lot of teams in Major League Baseball and still get nowhere near it. So we'll see. Can the Dodgers live up to that $1 billion spending? They better. If they don't, I don't know how much a Dodger dog is going to cost in 2 years. I don't know, $500 for a Dodger dog. But here's the 3 and out, the things we're looking forward to or keeping an eye on as spring training continues to unfold. Number one's got to be the Reds infield situation with Noelvi Marte missing 80 games now. Things have opened up a little bit for Spencer Steer, for Jonathan India. All of a sudden, a little less pressure and a lot more at bats. So it's a good thing for those guys. Again, I continue to say buy low on Marte everywhere. It's going to be fine. If you can get a discount on him in redraft, take it. Stash him for the second half because he will be up there at some point. He is a big league player. Number 2, the Acuna progress. So everything was clear and good. That's awesome. Now let's get him back on the field sooner than later. Let's continue to monitor that, make sure there's no setbacks, fingers crossed. And then the third thing is the Kevin Gossman shoulder situation. He says he's okay. Everything seems to be going on track. This sometimes happens where guys just have a little fatigue or some dead arm issues this time of spring. But the Toronto Blue Jays can ill afford to lose Kevin Gossman from this rotation. That's the guy you cannot lose. So keep a close eye on this. Gossman, one of my favorite pitchers in fantasy. And I guess, Matt, at some point in time, Blake Snell and Jordan Montgomery are going to sign. I don't know. The season's getting awful close. We'll find out, but that'll do it for us. But the story of the game goes on. For Matt Striker, I'm Joey P. We'll see you next time, kids. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday.